And today's topic is a bit more on the. Like usually I aim for things to be as basic as possible, and today I think we could not have been as basic and as complicated when we are talking about empathy and the relationship of empathy and feelings. I mean, I feel like it has been the most thrown around word in the past decade, especially in the mental health professionals, life coaching circle. Like, whatever you need to do empathy, right? But rarely do we talk about what do we understand when we mean by empathy. How is it that actually helps anyone? And what is it that you're doing when you're saying that I'm empathizing with someone? What is it exactly that you're supposed to be doing? Because I have had this situation with even with experienced mental health professionals. When we try to talk about empathy, and I hear the most thrown around definition that goes with the word empathy. That is putting yourself in someone else's shoes, right? And this is me on a personal level. I feel this definition has done a lot of disservice to the understanding of empathy itself. And today I would love to explore this quite a simple yet such a overtly spoken about but rarely understood subject of empathy, and how is it important for us. Okay, Bhanumati has said that they can see both of us. So Nitin,
That's a good news.
so
But you
Nitin,
just empathize with me on the live not starting a few moments back.
yes, it was such a pain though, and I hope others can empathize with us right now. With that in mind, Nitin, your thoughts on empathy, and maybe we can how important it is for a mental health professional. And I think there is this confusion that a lot of people feel that empathy is quite an inherent talent that one just has, and but without this mystical approach to empathy, what does this look like mean for a mental health professional or a life coach, and how is it so important?
Okay. So let's turn this around first. Before I talk about how it is important for psychologists, coaches, and so on, since you have been working in the space of empathy and active listening for such a long time, let's first hear what you have to say about empathy, and then we take it forward from there.
Certainly. Happy to. I mean, this is a topic I can just rant about as well. So, for me, there are some. I would like to first point a finger at the definition itself, and from there, let's see if we can take this conversation further. So, when we look at empathy as putting yourself as one in someone else's shoes, right? Usually, I ask my the participants the first question: have you ever worn someone else's shoes? And they say yes, and usually, you remember wearing your cousin's shoes when you had gone to live with them at some point in your time in your life. And then I asked them, did you experience the shoe the same way as your cousin did? Right? You wore their shoe, but are you experiencing that shoe the same way your cousin did? Because isn't this what we are trying to understand when we say that we are empathizing with someone? It's not necessarily about what the shoe is. It is about how the shoe is for that person. And no matter
Perfect.
how many of us, no matter even if we have the same shoe size, or we have the same gender, or whatever you want to base your understanding on this, as long as I'm wearing someone else's shoes, I can never truly experience it the way the person is experiencing. And the only way I can come close to that experience is only through a conversation with them. It is when they tell me how that shoe is for them. Right? Now, this in the context of providing empathy for, let's say, emotional crisis or any such thing. Very often, I have seen that people are actually confusing sympathy with empathy, where as long as they feel that they are doing something nice, they feel they're empathizing. So if I ask them, hey, if your friend had lost someone in their life, and they are crying, and if you were crying with them, is this empathy or sympathy? Half the people would say this is empathy, half the people say it is sympathy, right? And even the ones who are saying calling it right that this is sympathy, they don't know why they're calling it sympathy or why they didn't call it empathy. Now for those who think that okay, this is empathy because the other person is crying, I'm crying with them, you're already wrong. Now the one difference between sympathy and empathy, and again I'm just throwing out the gauntlet here so that we can explore these areas later on. Sympathy has to do with the pain of the person. It's about whether you feel bad for the person, that their pain has impacted you in some way, where you sense the pain in others and it causes pain in you. It's a bit different from sympathy. I'd like to say that sympathy minus compassion is what we call pity. Sympathy is not the same as pity. It is also a valid emotional response that human beings use to connect with each other. The problem is when we move on from a sympathetic statement, it becomes lip service, it becomes pity. And that is what a lot of us are actually complaining about. We are not complaining about sympathy, but these pity, non genuine statements that people give. But on the other hand, empathy does not even begin till the conversation of feelings come into the picture. Now, this is one thing that a lot of my participants find extremely difficult to get their head around, right? Why? Because we are just not used to having feelings, the articulation of feelings. When I say feelings, I'm not talking about good, bad, or feeling okay. I'm talking articulation, where I'm talking about guilt, shame, hopelessness, helplessness. I'm talking about these nuanced feelings that as we grow up, as we continue in our, growing up and becoming adults, these are much more complex feelings that we start experiencing. And are we able to articulate it? Empathy is the process where when I inquire or when I'm exploring with the person about their emotional state and when feelings come into the picture, for example, when Nitin is sharing something and in the conversation, I'm checking with Nitin, okay, so Nitin, when you did this, you said that you felt you were wrong in doing that. And you said yes. So do you mean to say you have been feeling guilty? And Nitin says yes. This process where I sense or I perceive the feeling inside the other person and I articulate it out for the person. When the person hears those feelings back, this is a very important process of empathizing in itself. Unfortunately, now in this there is further complications because a lot of us, due to experience of listening to the other person, many of us practice this just as a cognitive exercise. What do I mean? That you perceive or cognitively see that okay, this person is probably experiencing guilt. But unfortunately, what we do, and which is an important part of emotional empathy, which is if I sense guilt in you, if I perceive guilt in you, I need to connect with something in me that knows guilt. I'm not saying I'm to start experiencing guilt, right? This is the nuanced bit. If I start experiencing guilt, I may start trying to reject it or trying to move away from it, or, all those things may start happening. But what I essentially do is I connect with the feeling of guilt inside me. And from that space, when I reach out and share with you, you are experiencing guilt, aren't you? Right? This creates a moment of connection which helps in catharsis as well. Now, this connection is what a person experiences through listening. It's very intangible when we say this, though even you completely hear the story out or the beliefs, all of those things separate. When you are able, when the person is able to vulnerably talk about their feelings and you are able to voice it back to them and they get to hear it finally for themselves, this is when empathy truly starts. Till then, you're most probably just sympathizing. These are my initial thoughts. I know I take a long time to kind of come to the point, but I have my own process, I guess, I need to go through. So, thoughts from your side, Nitin?
So, Sachin, that's actually good. The way we look at it. So, let's go back to the original definition that you spoke about, right? That a lot of people believe empathy is about stepping into someone's shoes and be able to be, a, be able to wear those shoes.
Yes.
An extension of that, the way we look at it, is that it's not just about stepping into the shoes. It's actually be able to understand the shoes and be able to feel what, and to be able to understand what the other person feels wearing those shoes.
Right.
And how do you do that? So we have an expression that talks about that each person has their own maps, right? Now, if you want to understand how a person is feeling, you need to be able to understand their map. You have to understand what are the things that are happening in their life, or at least what are the things that they notice are happening in their life. How are they perceiving them, and how is that perception shaping the way they are feeling in that particular circumstances and situations.
Right.
Now, how do we figure out what those people's maps are? Going back to what you said. So listening becomes one of the most effective ways of exploring and understanding what a person's map is. Because the only way you can understand their map is when they actually tell what is there in their map.
Right.
And how do you listen to them? In order to listen to them, you also need to be able to ask them the right questions. Because if you can't ask them the right questions, at times, while people are feeling a particular emotion, they have a particular perception, but if the question is wrong, the question guides them in a completely different direction. And that prevents them from connecting with their own emotion and stops them from being able to expressing their emotions and their past experiences or their mental frameworks to you. And that's the reason why those questioning and listening become extremely important.
Right.
Also, when we speak about listening, in most cases, and when you said that we also need to reflect it back to the client, right? So, from a coaching and a therapy point of view, one of the things that we emphasize on is the idea of pacing and leading to all our participants. Pacing is basically going to the level of the client, which means once you understand the client's map, as much as you can, obviously no one can understand someone's map 100%, but as long as you understand their map, at least
now over here, right, Nitin, but this is the space where there's the big leap that usually people have to make when they are, I feel there is this particular challenge in terms of even seeing that this other person is coming from a different perspective, right? Very often my own maps come in the way of being able to see that this other person is operating from a completely different map.
Correct. But that's actually a part of the coach and the therapist training, right? If a coach or a therapist is not trained to be able to put aside their maps to a large extent while they are working with their clients, then I would seriously question their training.
Exactly. Now, this is where the challenge is coming in the first place. Like for the lot of people that I'm, having these engagements with, and this is where the surprise comes in, that I see this with even experienced professionals in many places, that this one basic thing of being able to suspend your own, or be able to accept that when I'm listening to the other person, my map can come in the way, but am I able to distinguish when my map has started taking over? And then am I able to set it aside? Am I able to suspend it and be able to go back to the person? Is there anything or any hack that may be helpful for people just to, because this difference is where a lot of people, their biases come up, and the whole conversation goes for a toss. Now, this switch, is there anything that as a life coach you may be able to help share?
So, Sachin, like I said, this is basically a part of the training itself, right? So when we are working with clients, when we are working with clients and when we are training practitioners, from day one, there's extensive emphasis on the fact that when you are talking to clients, you will not analyze and interpret any word that the client tells you. There's a lot of emphasis on helping people learn to listen what the client is saying rather than trying to read between lines.
Exactly.
Now, the moment you learn to listen what people are saying, and you are learning slowly and gradually to realize how your interpretation or how your analysis of what the client is saying comes in the way.
Yeah.
It becomes like planting of a seed, right? So we do a complete activity where we'll actually help people go through a small paragraph and then ask them questions from the paragraph. And the questions, there will be 3 kinds of questions. That based on the information you have received from the paragraph, the new sentences or the new information that is being given below, is it true, false, or not enough information? I think there are around 11 questions. They have been designed in a way in which most of them are not enough information. One is yes, one is no. invariably, for the first time when people do this activity, in almost 11 out of 11, they will mark zero, not enough information. It will either be true or false.
Yes.
Right? And that, when they go through that activity and then when we do a debrief, that's when they realize, wait, so this much of reading between the lines we have done.
Yes.
And that becomes the starting point for them, for us to actually help them recognize that this is the reason why you need to pay attention to what people are saying.
Right.
Even earlier when I was speaking about questioning models, right? So unlike other questioning models which focus more on your analysis, that the client says something, then you try to interpret it, then you understand it, and based on that understanding, you ask a follow-up question. Our entire questioning model is based on specifically what the client is saying.
Exactly.
And whatever question you ask are questions to clarify what they've said rather than trying to analyze.
Right. Now, this thing, right? Now, this is where English is coming in the way. Like, very often I find myself just being an English teacher more than anything when we are training, right? Are you using words? Because for a lot of people, there is absolutely no difference between analysis and clarify. They may use it interchangeably, right? Where when we are trying to listen to someone, all that we are trying to do is reach where the person is. That this is where I am. And we are saying, okay, did I get it? Like, am I where you are? Or if I don't have the information, I'll ask them, could you give me more? Like a simple statement, like someone may just tell me, oh my God, my life's just so messed up, right? And very often I see that the person who's listening to me will just continue that conversation as if they completely understood what the hell I mentioned here. When they go on further, they are like, oh, yes, messed up. And they continue. And I'm like, well, what did you understand when I said messed up? Right? Oh, yeah, that you are going through a bad time. No, I understood. Right? You are going through a bad time. How is this any information? I could have said that before the call came in, that this person is going through a bad time. This is no insight. But being able to check with the person, could you tell me more? What does messed up mean to you?
So for those of you who are watching us and having this conversation, my request is refer to a questioning tool called NLP Meta Model.
Could you
if you
repeat that, the name of the model?
Correctly. Sachin, sorry, did you say something?
Yes, I said, could you repeat the name of the model? I think we had a bit of a break there.
Called the NLP Meta Model.
NLP Meta Model.
It's one of the most remarkable questioning tools you will come across, simply because the way it's designed purely focuses on words that the other person has asked. So for example, right now when you mentioned that my life is messed up.
Right.
So when you're understanding that sentence, the word messed up is an unspecified verb where it could mean different things for different people.
Right.
So that's why you'll ask a clarifying question. When you say messed up, what exactly does messed up mean?
Right.
Right? How do you know that it's messed up? So you're trying to gather all of that information that's already there in the client's mind, but the client has just summarized it in that one line.
Right.
And now if you try to understand that one line without the background context,
right,
it will not make sense. So that's the beauty of the meta model questions, that, and it can be applicable in coaching, therapy, and your day-to-day life. I can't tell you how many people I know who use it in conflicts in their companies, with their team leaders, with their subordinates, with their partners.
I mean, it's almost a common-sensical model, isn't it?
It is. When you read it, you realize this is so common-sensical. But it's also, in the field of coaching and therapy for a long time, people have been taught to read between lines.
Right.
And while learning how to read between lines, we've forgotten to read the lines themselves.
What I see is there is a difference between where you are trying to share. So this is what I'm observing, right? Like when someone is sharing, for example, I struggle when my partner leaves home. I am concerned that she may be going out and meeting other people and stuff like that. Okay, this is what the person is trying to share. Now, instead of being able to check with the person, oh, so you meant to, it bothers you, it upsets you when your wife goes out. Could you tell me more about what your thoughts are when that happens? And, try to get more information. Very quickly, something in my head tells me, oh, this person is insecure. Right? And I believe this is the perception. right?
Correct.
Oh, Sachin, yeah. I asked them, what is the meaning? What was the person trying to say? Oh, the person was insecure. And then I repeat. And I ask them, like, okay, can you say this to yourself? Was the person trying to tell you, hi, I'm insecure? Was that what the person was trying to communicate to you? Oh, no, no. They wouldn't call themselves insecure. Right. So what were they saying? Can we go back to that? What were they trying to say? Sorry, you were trying to say something, Nitin.
No, so
Yes.
that's what I'm saying, that that part that they are insecure is the interpretation and analysis that we are coming to, right?
Right.
And that's what we would recommend, and we keep insisting on people that this needs to be avoided. And this, uh, rather than saying we need to learn this, it's almost like we need to unlearn the fact that we have learned to analyze everything.
Exactly. So, first, being able to unlearn the fact that my interpretation has become so quick, so fast, that I rarely give time to check with the person, did I even interpret it correctly? And this also is coming from the need to, for example, fix the person quickly, or try to get pain relief for the person faster, because we want to do the process as fast as possible. Unfortunately, these steps that we have to take extremely slow, extremely patiently. I mean, almost I see that therapy has started even before the person has entered the room, right? So being able to understand that building rapport and active listening comes before therapy even starts, right? And it is only once therapy starts that some level of, I mean, like, I essentially, I think this is one of the conversations we had in the past, where we compared psychologists or counselors of psychotherapists to physiotherapists, right? Where it's not that they give you medicines, but once they understand where is the joint pain and what you're trying to get relief in and what action are you looking to perform, based on that, they may be able to recommend a modality or exercise, which they will give you as a homework, and they will also try to get you to do when they are in front of them. This is what some, in a simplistic, I know I'm oversimplifying probably, a simplistic way to look at therapy. But before therapy even starts, do you even know where the joint is which is aching right now? And do you know, even if the person wants that joint to move, and why do they want it to move? What is the end result? This type of conversation does not even start or happen. The conversation just begins. The psychologist has already interpreted what the problem is and has already recommended CBT or whatever. Would you say this is something you have experienced?
See, it depends on practitioners to practitioners. Some people uh, are so focused on what to do next that they are not able to be fully present to what's happening with the client right now, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are other people who are actually able to figure out a way to be more present. But again, as I said, a large part of it, I actually, because I've had these conversations with practitioners, psychology students, I know a large part of it is actually down to the training that they've
Right.
received. They are simply
Or
trying to
have they
replicate
even?
what they've learned in the training
Or
program.
have they even received the training? Because when you check with a lot of the essentially this comes in the building rapport, empathy, building rapport and active listening, and very often the amount of time they have spent in any formal training is half an hour or something of class conversation that they have had. And very often empathy or even active listening comes down to, oh, you have to give eye contact and you do when the person is saying something. Like, I'm like, you are training yourself to look like a listener and not to listen,
So in
right?
fact, I'll actually give you a different perspective on
Yes,
this.
please.
A lot of time people kept telling me that you need to look into client's eyes before the client is, when the client is talking to you, you need to nod.
Yeah.
And we actually follow a client information receiving format, which is completely different.
Okay.
When
Tell me
I'm
more.
working with the client, I would literally write every word down that the client is speaking.
Mm.
And generally my screen is sharing so the client can read what I'm saying.
Right.
So obviously the amount of face of mine that is visible is ittu sa, right? अब उसमें कहाँ client will look at my eyes, what client will look at what the client's focus is on the screen where I'm
Right.
typing. And in what? For the last year, 6, 7 years we have been doing this, maybe more actually.
Mm.
Earlier when we were doing offline, I would do it on a whiteboard where I'll write everything on the whiteboard. Now on the screens, ever since we have gone digital completely,
Right.
I have not had one client coming in telling me that, Nitin, I felt that the rapport is not established, that I did not feel the connect. In fact, if anything, because most of the clients that I get are referred to me by other therapists. So they would tell me that, Nitin, this was probably one of the most unique sessions we have gone through.
This was one of the first times I felt heard.
This was one of the first times actually, while every time when we were talking to people, people would look at us, they will nod, they will try to paraphrase me. And most clients also understand these terminologies. That it's another, they research and they
Right.
they're like, but this was different because I never knew that I could see your notes as a therapist. But I'm writing about you. Why can't you see what I'm writing about you?
See, like this is the Hollywood version of counseling, right? There's this expectation of a couch coming in, and I'm just crying about whatever is bothering my life, and the other person is just looking down through the glasses. I mean, here's the classic example. Right now, you can't see me. Right, you have absolutely no clue whether I'm making making faces at you or what am I doing, but we are able to connect, we are able to have a fun conversation, we experiencing the connection, we are able to go in depth into all these tangential parts as well, but and there is a connection that is experienced. So it's not even something that I don't even have to see the person. And how nuanced empathy or active listening actually is, it's very rarely even understood that listening isn't I think half the people may even struggle with understanding the difference between hearing and listening, right? But it was absolutely great in terms of hearing from you. So there's a great piece of information called the NLP meta model that people can look into, as to it's a questioning format that helps you suspend your I mean, the tool is designed in such a way that you're so focused on the language itself that it helps you break away from your own perception of things and makes you check with the person, makes you clarify with the person in terms of what are they trying to say. So something for people to practice. But this is only half of the battle won, where you come close to the perspective. Now, when we involved in emotional empathy, this is where with the perspective comes the feelings attached with that belief, right? The lens has a feeling, has a color to it. That is the emotion or the feeling in the back end that we are talking about. And that is what is coloring the perception in a way. So this part where we are able to first take the other person's truth as is, that it is their truth, I will not engage my truth there, be able to accept their beliefs, biases, whatever you may think of them as, but accepting, giving space for that to exist. And along with that, acknowledging their pain. When you sense pain in them, this is more of an intuitive process again, but when you sense pain in them, acknowledging it, and then finally reaching to the feelings bit. And the analogy we tend to use is that of a song, Nitin, where we say every communication bit is, like we have spoken before, we divide it into factual information, thoughts or opinion or meaning. We divide emotional state or the pain intensity that the person is experiencing. And fourth component being the individual feelings, right? What we try to think of it is, think of a song. The words of the song, right, tells you the factual information. Consider the factual information. It's the words. You can take words and it can be interpreted into multiple things. But then the second aspect, that song has a meaning, that tum itna jo muskura rahe ho, kya gam hai jisko chupa rahe ho, right? Now these words, if you just look at the words, it may not mean too much for you. But when you try to look at the meaning of what was being tried to set, oh, I may be able to sense that, all right, is the person saying that they have a lot of pain inside and that is why they are showing off it in a smile? Because now what does it say? Are they not able to cry, or they would rather not cry because of further implication? Falana, falana. Now do you see a world opens up there? The third component, the emotional state, is the tune and the intensity. For example, the tune of it has that sad quality to it, right? So there is almost that sad quality. You are able to sense sorrow or pain in that song. But the empathetic element, that is the feelings of this song, are the individual sa, re, ga, ma, pa of the tune, which is hiding in plain sight in front of us, right? The tune is right there. But the complexity of the tune can only be understood when the individual sa, re, ga, ma, pa that constitute that song comes out. And when we mean emotional empathy, what we try to say here is reach the sa, re, ga, ma, pa, reach the individual components of the tune that the person is singing. And when the person hears it back, oh, I have been singing sa, re, pa, sa, re, pa again and again, which is, for example, in this case, guilt, the person is able to see, it is me singing this song in every part of my life. They are able to now see the guilt that they are having, for example, in their work life, in their professional life, and how it is their reaction to this guilt that is causing them pain and not necessarily their boss or their partner. Your thoughts on what I just shared?
No, which is actually completely correct. That the whole idea is you need to be able to break out what's happening with the client in these components and be able to understand each of those components. Remember, I earlier spoke about pacing and leading.
Yes.
So one of the things with pacing and leading is this: that we actually tell them that when you're pacing people, so what is pacing, right? Pacing is going to the level of the people. So for that, you need to understand at what level they are.
Yes.
And their existence operates at multiple places. There is one, the mental map that we spoke about.
Right.
Obviously, we can't read the mind of the other person completely. So there will be a limit to how much we can understand them and how much they can express themselves, to be fair also. Right? The next is to be able to express, to be able to pace their tone, their pitch, the kind of words they are using.
Right.
Because each of those have their own energy.
Right.
Each of them have their own feel. Right? And then the body language and the expression. And many times, if you're just able to pace the other person correctly while having a conversation with them, asking them the background information, the context, all of this will actually help you recognize that, you know what, I understand why they are feeling the way they are feeling.
Right. And this is the intangible bit, right? This is the bit that it's that unique thing that does not even need to be spoken of. It's like the tuning fork example. If I'm vibrating on 104 as a frequency, right? And if my therapist, for example, is able to sense, right, I'm vibrating on 104. And if the therapist is able to connect with something in them with that 104, now what they experiencing is a sense of connection where they are both vibrating at that same. So for example, this is where that guilt and this is where the essence of emotional empathy also comes into play, where I'm able to connect with the guilt in me and I'm able to offer space for the other person to experience it safely. I think is the moment and the essence where empathy becomes healing as well.
True, very true. About the fact that you were talking about. So one thing that we tell people, or one of the things that I would tell most of our participants is this: if you really want to know whether you've been able to understand the other person or not, is see if you have understood them enough to come to the same conclusion that they have come. So currently what happens is when someone says I'm feeling guilty, our first thought process is how do I make them understand that guilt is not the right emotion.
Right. And they will be like, oh, but it was not your fault. What they try to apply common sense, they try to interpret the situation and make the person feel good. But failing to see that it is probably their own bad relationship with guilt that is making them push the other person from not feeling it. I'm sorry. Like, would that...
Correct. So for you to be able to make the client feel understood about how they feel and at the same time be willing to move on from there requires you to be able to come to the same conclusion that they have,
right,
based on the information that is available for you. So that's one of the things that we will actually talk about. That all right, when you're working with clients, when you're collecting information, right, how long do you keep collecting information? Till you reach a place where you realize that given the information that I have, both in terms of what really happened and how the client is thinking and perceiving of that particular experience.
Wonderful.
If you were in that place, you would come to the exact same conclusion that the client has come to.
Wonderful. So this gives you a way to check with yourself as well that, hey, am I still connected to this person?
And because you have all of those details and you have come to the same conclusion, now when you explore how I can move ahead.
Right.
Your exploration is more in sync with what the where the client already is.
Mm. Mm.
And it also becomes easier for the client to then follow you out of that space if required.
Right. And it is this tuning that I feel like when we are able to show that I am able to offer space for you to experience feel guilt and feel guilt, and I don't try to pull you out, push you away, or any such thing. My level of comfort that I show also helps the person to allow themselves to take a step back and not be, not try to push themselves away. It is when they stop trying to reject or run away from these difficult feelings when they start experiencing healing as well, right? So I think that brings us to a close as well at a very notable point here. It was, I think we overshot it as well, but we started quite late due to all the Instagram issues, and we have to actively work on an alternate system. But as usual, Nitin, absolutely wonderful having this conversation with you. It has given me a couple of things that I want to go back to quickly and check out and try and put it into practice, and or how I can incorporate it in my training. I'm always stealing from you. So thank you so much for
Same
that.
here, Sachin. It was very nice speaking to you to get to understand your perspective about this. And I look forward to subsequent sessions that we have. I will look at what is the alternate that we can do. Probably we'll go live on YouTube first, and
So
then we'll do a repost of the same thing on Insta or something. So let's see how we figure it out. But maybe in this week I'll get this sorted.
perfect. Thank you, Nitin, and
Thank you.
lovely Mike. Your voice has become crystal clear.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. And thank you everyone who attended this session. It was absolutely heartwarming to see that you guys continue to show up here. I know we are coming up with those topics that we feel are helpful for, especially for people as budding psychologists, budding life coaches, where you're looking to start your first steps, and where it is very common to feel pressure to learn a lot of therapy modalities, and school trying to incorporate a lot of schools of thoughts, or try to be stringently into one school. I'm a Jungian or I'm a Freudian, and then die with the flag there. What the only thing what we are trying to do is, before any of these starts, trying to work on the basic qualities that are needed for someone working in this sector, and it is going to be very different from the modalities. Once you get the basics right, your foundation is great, you can build a skyscraper. But until and unless your foundation is clear, higher modalities which are much more nuanced, if your basic is not clear, what you have understood from the different modalities also going to be unclear, because the higher modalities or more complex modalities you go into, they are taking certain things for granted, that these things as foundational basic, right? So especially our viewers from India and Asian countries, there is a dearth of such trainings, and we have an ICHARS, and with the Connect Hut, these are trainings that we do offer for you to go back to basics and ensure that the foundation is set straight. Do check us out, and we would love to interact with you guys further. So do share what are other topics that you would like us to cover in these discussions. Thank you again, Nitin. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.